Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. In the previous tutorials, we learned about ID, name and tag name locators. Those locators help us identify elements based on the uniqueness and structure. So today's session is very special because we are stepping into a space where front-end styling meets test automation. Okay, so in this lecture, we are going to deeply understand what class names really are, why single and multiple classes behave differently, why spaces completely break the class name locator, and how to use class-based locators safely in real automation projects. So this is class name locator. So by the end of this video, you will stop guessing with the class locators and start using them intelligently and safely. So let's begin. So before we touch Selenium, we must understand what a class actually means in HTML. A class is not created for automation. A class exists primarily for styling and the layout. Okay, so it's basically not created for automation. Okay, it's only for styling and layout. Developers use classes to apply the CSS styles, the cascading style sheets, okay, control UI behavior, reuse visual design, and automation is just a secondary consumer of classes. Okay, so let's check our example here, the practice page, and we have two buttons here. We'll see the HTML code of for them. Okay, so class name locator practice, sign in and login. So again, I will just inspect, right click and inspect. So it will open up this HTML section, and then you will see here the button is class, button is tag, and then class is login. And for the other button, that is sign in button, submit sign in. Okay, and then if you see the name is sign in. So for one, the class is submit sign in button, and for second class is login. Okay, so we have these two buttons, but having their class definitions is different. Okay, so the class definitions are different. Okay, so if you see this first button, that is sign in button, okay, which has class submit and sign in button. So basically this button has two class names. One is submit and the second is sign in button. So even though they are written in one line, they are actually two different separate classes. Okay, so think of this button like a person wearing a company ID badge, that is submit, and a department badge, that is sign in button. Okay, so same reason, sorry, same person and multiple identities. Okay, so space inside a class attribute do not create one class. Okay, so they create multiple independent classes. This rule alone saves hours of debugging. Okay, so for the other button, which is having the single class login, okay, so this one is simple, one class, one identity, and one styling group. So this is the safest type of class to use with Selenium. Okay, so now let's talk about let's talk Selenium. Okay, so Selenium provides a locator called by.className. Okay, so if you simply go here, and then if you just type go here by like find element and by dot class name, so you see it will accept the string class name. Okay, so this Selenium's class name locator accept only one class. So if you have two classes like submit sign in button, so that will not work because it has two classes. Okay, so it doesn't understand the spaces. Okay, so for the correct case, for the login button, we can simply use this login. So driver.find element by.class name and login. So this one. Okay, so this is good, this will work perfectly fine. Okay, and so again, why? Because it has only one class. Selenium find elements having this class and no ambiguity. Okay, because of it's only one class. So if we use something different for the other button, let's say for example driver dot find element by dot class name, and then now I will use the other option, that is submit sign in button. So let's say this one, Okay, and then maybe I will not use anything. Okay, so this will not work because uh, and it will fail always because it has two classes, and this class name doesn't accept two classes. Okay, it will accept only one, this as a one class, but basically these are two classes, submit and sign in button. Okay, so Selenium does not treat this as class submit and sign in button. So instead Selenium thinks there is a single class name submit sign in button, which does not exist. So that's why if you run this, it will give you no such element exception exception. Okay, so maybe you can just simply try running it. We are just trying to locate it, we are not performing any action. That's still fine, I guess. We'll see like how it will work. Okay, now you see the test case has failed. Okay, you see compound class names are not permitted, invalid in selector exception. Okay, at the same time, if we simply use this in XPath, then that will work. So let's say for example, if I write a XPath for this, again XPath we will cover at the end. So let's say for example, if I write the XPath like this, button at the rate class, and then something like this, then it will work. So if I just simply write it above, driver dot find element by dot XPath, and now this one, okay, again close the statement with semicolon, and now it will work here till here, and the last line will fail. Okay, so make sure while using the classes, you should have only one class here. Okay, you see the test case has failed again on the last line. You see it is failing at the 32 line. Okay, so now how you can make it work? So we can make it work again with this. So we can simply use find element by dot class name, and then instead of the whole class name we can simply give submit. Okay, as well as like this will also work just like the same this line. Okay, again there is one more way, you can simply add the second class name, so that will also work. Okay, but again if your class name, if you have multiple elements using this class, then again it will not work properly. Okay, because it will click on some different element than which you are expecting, right? So again this will fail here, it will work till 39. Okay, it has loaded the browser. Okay, now it has failed, and then you see it has failed again on the last line. So this is not a valid one. Okay, so so this is one of the most common beginner mistakes in Selenium. Beginner assume if the class attribute has spaces, Selenium should handle it. Okay, but Selenium doesn't work that way. Okay, so because class name locators maps to DOM tokens, tokens are split by spaces. Selenium expects one token only at a time. Okay, so if you see a space in the class attribute, do not use by dot class name. You can go for the other valid class name, or else you can use XPath, or else you can try this way. Okay, so you can simply use one class name, but again that should be unique. So this one still seems to be unique, so we can go with this option. Okay, obviously you can go for the CSS selector, so that also should work fine. Okay, so for multi-class element, the correct approach is the CSS selector or XPath. So which I have shown here. Okay, so again, XPath and CSS we will be uh, going through in our upcoming sessions. Okay, so let's say, for example, if you want to check the check with the CSS selector. Okay, so let's go with CSS selector. So you can simply add submit dot sign in button. Okay, so if you go again, we will discuss this in our upcoming sessions. But yeah, if you just simply give a dot in space, like at the space, it will work just fine with CSS selector. Okay, so the element must have both classes. So you see, if I simply add it with the CSS selector, driver dot find element by dot CSS selector, there is one more locator, that is CSS selector, and then again you can just close it. Again it will fail it here, and this all these 5 lines will work fine. Yeah, you see, it should have failed on the last line. You see at 35 line, right? So at this line it is failing. So that means this way for using class name, the CSS selector XPath works just fine. Okay, so CSS selectors are designed for styling, so they understand multiple classes, handle complex UI, and are faster than XPath. Okay, so this is why class name is limited and CSS selectors are powerful. Okay, so let's summarize the best practices now. So these are industry rules. Okay, so by dot class name we need to use when the class has single word, the class is stable, and the class is not auto generated. Again, it shouldn't be dynamic. Okay, so by dot class name login, so that way you can work. Okay, or if you want to use the particular the name which having spaces, then you prefer to use one class name. Okay, instead of both, right? So avoid by dot class name when class has spaces, class changes frequently, the class is purely for styling. Okay, so we should avoid this thing. Okay, so prefer by dot id first, then by dot name second, by dot class name only when safe, and then CSS selector for multiple classes. Okay, so this brings us to end of the tutorial on class name locator. So today you learned how single and multiple classes work, why spaces break class name locator, how to correctly handle multi-class elements, real world best practices used by the professionals. So if this video helped you understand Selenium better, make sure you like, subscribe, and share this with someone learning automation. So in the next tutorial, we will move to link text and partial link text locators, and I will show you why they look simple but can be very dangerous if misused. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next lecture.